In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Deathworld Alliance was a coalition unlike any other. Made up of species that had survived the most brutal planets known, they were hardened, tough, and cautious. Their worlds were harsh, where life itself was a constant struggle against hostile environments, deadly creatures, and ruthless rivals. This alliance had formed out of necessity, to protect themselves from greater threats and to share knowledge about survival in unforgiving conditions. For centuries, they had kept to their own territories, wary of outsiders and suspicious of newcomers. But then rumors began to spread. Stories from distant sectors about a new species, one unlike any they had encountered before. Humans. These beings came from a blue planet called Earth, a world that seemed fragile at first glance but hid a secret power within its people. Earthlings had survived floods, fires, famine, and wars. Their adaptability was legendary. They were said to be stubborn, fiercely determined, and capable of thriving where others failed. Such qualities intrigued the Deathworld Alliance, but they also made many uneasy. Could these humans be trusted? Or were they wild, unpredictable forces that could upset the delicate balance the Alliance had worked so hard to maintain? The decision was made to invite humans to a grand summit on Varnus, a volcanic world where the Alliance often gathered. The planet itself was a test of endurance. Rivers of molten lava carved through blackened landscapes, geysers erupted without warning, and the skies glowed with permanent storms. It was a place where only the strongest could survive, a perfect backdrop for such a historic meeting. When the human delegation arrived, the leaders of the Alliance gathered in a massive hall carved into the side of a mountain. Aliens of all shapes and sizes, from reptilian scales to crystalline bodies, eyed the humans carefully. The humans stepped forward with a confidence that was both surprising and unsettling. They spoke plainly, their words free of diplomatic fluff or hidden threats. Their leader, Commander Alara, was direct and calm, answering questions honestly and showing no fear of the strange faces surrounding her. The humans impressed not only with their courage, but with their clear strategic insight. They spoke of their history openly, their battles on Earth, their innovations born from necessity, and their willingness to work as a team despite their differences. It was a story of survival, yes, but also of hope and cooperation. Yet, not all Alliance members were convinced. One figure stood apart from the rest, his name whispered with both respect and caution. Ralvok. He was a veteran of countless battles, a thinker who trusted neither luck nor emotion but cold, hard facts. His eyes never left the humans during the meeting, studying their every move, every word. He had heard tales of human unpredictability, how they could shift from kindness to fierce violence without warning. To Ralvok, humans were not just survivors. They were forces of nature, wild and uncontrollable. Their blunt honesty was refreshing to some, but alarming to others who preferred careful diplomacy. As the meeting progressed, the humans shared glimpses of their technology, devices designed not just for war, but for adapting to the harshest conditions. They spoke of their world's diversity, from frozen tundras to dense jungles, each environment shaping their people into fighters, thinkers, and builders. The Alliance members listened, some with admiration, others with growing unease. When the time came to vote on the invitation, there was hesitation, but the humans' sincerity and strength could not be denied. The Alliance accepted them, welcoming Earth as a new member. Still, as the summit closed and the delegates prepared to depart, Ralvok remained behind, his mind restless. He knew that this decision could change everything, not just for the Alliance, but for the entire galaxy. The humans were allies now, but more than that, they were unknown variables. Ralvok wondered if the Alliance had invited friends or unleashed a storm. He felt the weight of that uncertainty deep in his bones, knowing that the future would reveal whether humanity's fierce spirit was a blessing or a warning. In the quiet moments after the crowd dispersed, he whispered to himself, "Lito, humans do not follow the rules we know. They fight in ways we cannot predict. We have welcomed a force that may be impossible to control." As Varnus's volcanic fires lit the night sky, Ralvok watched and waited, bracing for what was to come. As the humans settled into the ranks of the Deathworld Alliance, their influence became impossible to ignore. Unlike many of the hardened species who clung tightly to their old ways and cautious strategies, the humans approached every challenge with a fierce hunger to adapt and innovate. They brought new tactics learned from surviving Earth's brutal environments. Icy tundras, scorching deserts, dense jungles where only the toughest thrived. Their ships and weapons were not just powerful, but designed to be flexible and resilient, able to shift rapidly during battle. Human commanders favored surprise, using hit-and-run attacks that bewildered their enemies, combined with relentless endurance that seemed to push beyond natural limits. These qualities inspired awe among some members of the Alliance, who began to see humans as valuable warriors and bold thinkers capable of turning the tide in dangerous conflicts. Yet among these rising admirers there was also growing unease, particularly from Ralvok, the Alliance veteran whose instincts had not been proven wrong yet. The more he learned about human operations on the frontier, the more his concern deepened. Reports flowed back from missions led by humans venturing into hostile sectors, regions filled with deadly predators, rogue factions, and environments even the Alliance considered too dangerous. These missions were often violent, not just because of the threats they faced but due to the humans' own relentless fighting style. Battles were won with brutal efficiency. They did not hesitate to take risks that others thought reckless. Entire enemy outposts were dismantled with a combination of cunning traps and sheer force, leaving survivors speechless and Alliance allies divided. Some whispered that humans fought like storms, sweeping away obstacles without care for what might be lost in their path. Ralvok found himself torn. He admired human courage but feared that their willingness to push boundaries could trigger chaos. The Alliance had survived for centuries by careful balance, avoiding needless wars and choosing battles with precision. The humans' blunt, sometimes violent methods risked shattering that fragile peace. He shared his fears only with his closest, a wise and loyal strategist named Celira. Together, they discussed the possibility that human strength might be a double-edged sword, capable of crushing enemies but also sparking conflicts no one could control. Ralvok confided how deeply unsettled he was, knowing that if a war erupted, fueled by human fire, many of their own worlds might not survive the fallout. "They do not fight like us," he told Celira late one night, his voice heavy with warning. "Their fury is different, faster, more relentless. If we lose control, the Alliance will break apart, and death will follow." Meanwhile, across the Alliance, whispers of caution grew louder. Some leaders warned that while humans were powerful, their lack of restraint was dangerous. Others admired their tenacity and hoped that humanity's boldness would bring new strength to old struggles. The tension built like a storm on the horizon. Uneasy alliances strained under the pressure of conflicting opinions about what the humans meant for the future. Yet the humans themselves seemed unaware or perhaps indifferent to the quiet fears swirling around them. Commander Ilara and her team pressed forward, driven by a belief that their way was the right way, that survival required risk and unyielding will. For them, the Alliance was not just a place to prove their strength, it was a chance to reshape the galaxy's future. As missions continued, new victories fed both hope and dread. Battles were harder and bloodier, enemies more desperate, but humans fought with an energy and spirit that seemed unstoppable. Through it all, Ralvok watched from the shadows, the weight of his worries growing heavier. He knew the rising storm was not just a metaphor, it was real, and soon it would break, and, when it did, no one could say what would be left standing. Tensions within the Deathworld Alliance had been simmering for months, with the humans' aggressive tactics creating unease among the more cautious members. The fragile balance finally shattered when a seemingly small border dispute with a rival faction erupted into open conflict. The rival faction, known for its cunning and ruthless diplomacy, had been testing the Alliance's borders, pushing for control over strategic resources. During a heated council meeting, voices clashed over how to respond. Many elders urged restraint, fearing that any rash move might ignite a war too large to control. They proposed negotiations and limited patrols, hoping to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. But the human representatives, led by Commander Alara, argued fiercely for decisive action. They saw the rival factions' provocations not as mere annoyances, but as threats that could only be stopped by strength and swift retaliation. Their message was clear: lingering threats only grow bolder, and waiting would only cost more lives. Among the council, Ralvok's warnings were among the loudest. His voice, often quiet but weighted with experience, pleaded for caution. He reminded the leaders that the galaxy had already suffered from fractured alliances and devastating wars. He warned that escalation could unleash chaos far beyond anyone's control. But his appeals were drowned out by a growing chorus of support for the human stance. The Alliance, swayed by human passion and recent successes in battle, agreed to launch a counterattack aimed at ending the conflict quickly. When the humans deployed their forces, their strategy was a brutal mix of guerrilla warfare and high-tech, precision strikes. Using small, highly mobile units, they infiltrated enemy territory, striking quickly and disappearing before the rivals could respond. Their weapons, engineered for versatility and devastating impact, overwhelmed the rival faction's defenses. Entire outposts fell within hours and supply lines were cut with surgical efficiency. The rival faction's losses were staggering, and their forces scattered in disarray. But the victory came at a price far greater than anyone had anticipated. The show of human strength alarmed not just the rival faction but many other groups, watching from the shadows. News of the swift and ruthless attack spread like wildfire, reaching distant systems and prompting whispers of fear and caution. Leaders across the galaxy, some longtime rivals of the Deathworld Alliance, began fortifying their defenses and seeking new alliances. They feared that the Alliance, now empowered by humans and their unpredictable fighting style, was becoming too dangerous. The humans' willingness to strike hard and without hesitation unsettled old powers who had grown accustomed to slower, measured conflicts. Meanwhile, Ralvok watched these developments with growing dread. He had long feared that the Alliance's embrace of human methods would provoke a war no one could control. Now, as multiple factions began preparing for conflict, he knew that war was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. The war he had warned about was no longer distant. It had begun in the shadows and was spreading rapidly. He saw that the humans, with their fierce spirit and tactical genius, were both a source of strength and a spark that could ignite widespread destruction. The Alliance faced a test unlike any before, where survival depended not just on firepower, but on unity and wisdom. As battle lines formed across the stars, alliances once thought unbreakable showed signs of strain. The galaxy braced for a conflict that would challenge every species, every belief, and every hope for peace. Within this growing storm, humans stood ready, not only to fight but to shape the outcome of a war that would decide the future of all. Yet even as they prepared, the question lingered. Could the Deathworld Alliance hold together long enough to face the coming storm, or would the war tear them apart before it even truly began? The galaxy was unraveling at its seams, torn apart by relentless battles that swept through star systems once considered safe havens. What had started as a warning skirmish quickly escalated into full-scale war, with fleets clashing in the void, and planets becoming battlegrounds beneath burning skies. Amid this chaos, the humans stood out, not just for their advanced technology, but for an almost supernatural spirit that refused to bend or break. Their ships moved with relentless precision. Their soldiers fought with unyielding determination, and their leaders held firm even when all seemed lost. It was not just power that made them formidable. It was their refusal to accept defeat in any form. Watching these developments from the command bridge of his flagship, Ralvok felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. His fears, once whispered warnings, had become undeniable truths. The war was no longer about territory or pride. It was a brutal struggle for survival. Entire worlds were reduced to ash, alliances shattered under the strain of constant conflict, and countless lives were lost in the crossfire. Yet amidst this destruction, the humans did not descend into mindless conquest or ruthless domination. Instead, they sought alliances wherever possible, extending offers of peace and cooperation even as their weapons struck hard. their diplomats, moved with a surprising grace, negotiating ceasefires and truces, proving that their goal was not merely to win but to protect what remained of the galaxy's fragile order. Ralvok, once an unwavering skeptic, found himself torn between admiration and dread. He respected the humans' strength and their unwillingness to give up, qualities that had saved many lives within the Alliance. But he could not ignore the harsh reality that their brutal methods also caused deep scars that would take generations to heal, if they healed at all. His nights were filled with restless thoughts, wondering if inviting humanity into the Deathworld Alliance had been the gravest error of his long life. Perhaps their fierce spirit had been both a blessing and a curse, igniting a fire that now threatened to consume everyone. As the war dragged on, Ralvok began to see signs of change, not just in the galaxy, but within himself. He questioned whether the humans were the galaxy's last hope or its most dangerous gamble. His people, the stoic warriors who had survived countless harsh worlds, had never faced a force like this. The humans' combination of raw determination, tactical brilliance, and unwillingness to surrender was unlike anything he had seen. Despite his fears, he realized that without their presence, the Alliance might have crumbled even faster, overwhelmed by enemies eager to exploit any weakness. In quieter moments, Ralvok observed human soldiers and leaders not as threats, but as kindred spirits driven by a desire to protect their homes and futures. Their pain, their loss, and their courage mirrored his own people's struggles in a universe where survival was never guaranteed. Yet, he also understood the terrible cost of their approach. For every victory won by the humans, entire systems lay devastated, and countless innocents were caught in the crossfire. The galaxy's wounds were deep, and healing seemed a distant dream. Still, humanity pushed forward, a beacon of relentless hope in a dark and violent era. As the war reached its peak, Ralvok knew that the coming reckoning would decide not only the fate of the Deathworld Alliance, but the future of every star and species caught in the conflict. He prepared himself for the final battles with a mixture of dread and resolve, hoping that when the dust settled, the galaxy might find peace once more, and that humanity's fierce heart would be the light guiding them through the darkness. After years of endless battles and suffering, the once vibrant galaxy lay weary and broken, its wounds deep and raw from the brutal conflict that had engulfed countless star systems. The warring factions, battered and drained of resources, found themselves forced to lay down their weapons, if only temporarily, to face a truth too heavy to ignore. Continued war would mean total annihilation for all. The great halls of negotiation opened on a neutral world scarred by past violence, but now chosen as the place where fragile hope might be reborn. In a surprising turn, it was humanity, those fierce, unpredictable newcomers, who stepped forward not as conquerors, but as mediators, seeking to mend what had been shattered. Their representatives spoke not with the arrogance of victors, but with a humble offer to share the advanced technologies they had developed during the war, and to aid in rebuilding the devastated worlds, offering a future where cooperation and progress could replace fear and destruction. Among those present was Ralvok, once the most vocal skeptic of humanity's place within the Deathworld Alliance. He had spent countless sleepless nights fearing what the human strength and ferocity might unleash, convinced that their arrival would only hasten the Alliance's downfall. Yet now, as he sat at the negotiating table alongside human diplomats, he could not deny the truth that had settled deep within his soul. The humans had forced everyone to confront their own flaws and weaknesses. Their unyielding spirit and refusal to settle for less than survival had shaken the galaxy to its core, revealing that power wielded without compassion and wisdom was a path leading only to ruin. The Alliance, once a collection of hardened species united only by survival, instinct was beginning to change. Old grudges softened in the face of shared loss, and a new understanding took root. True strength was not measured by how fiercely one could fight, but by how well one could stand together, even after enduring unimaginable pain. As the final agreements were signed, pledging peace and cooperation, Ralvok withdrew to a quiet corner, his thoughts